Most people are just not going to make it. It's just a sad fact in this economic environment, in life in general. The reason I can say that probably more confidently than I ever have is that I'm pulling from my 15 plus years as a financial coach and looking at all of the different types of people that I've coached over the years. One of the things that always surprised me was I've run into people that have had worse situations than I was in. So they had more debt, less income, and all of that. And just by way of reminder, if you haven't followed me for very long, I successfully paid off $174,000 worth of debt in 2.5 years. I was following Dave Ramsey's program, just the basics like organizing my finances, setting up a budget, tracking expenses, having a debt elimination plan. And so the principles in all of that are really, really important. But the problem is for most people is they don't have a big enough why. So their why has to be big enough, has to be emotionally powerful enough that it feels like they're getting punched in the face, essentially. And that's what happened to me. So one of the things that was just always very surprising when I started doing financial coaching was, people that had been through similar scenarios to what I had been through several different times and still had not woken up. So it took me probably about the first 5 years of my coaching career to just recognize and I don't know that I've ever come to a sense of peace about it, but come to an understanding that some people are just not going to make it. I make these videos, I do this platform because I love Gen X, I love my generation. It's taken me quite a while to get to a place where I've always felt like I'm kind of this, I don't know what I am. I feel like I've been sort of forced into being kind of a millennial, but I also think kind of like a boomer as well. So I feel like a lot of people in our generation are sort of sandwiched into those two things. We grew up in this environment where it was pre-internet, so everything was analog at that point. You had rotary phones and touch button phones. They were all landlines. Cell phones didn't really start to become somewhat ubiquitous until maybe like the mid 90s or so, if memory serves. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. So I'm curious for you guys as Gen Xers that are looking at, retirement, is it a pipe dream? I think that we all have sort of gone through this phase or come into this understanding that, we're the first generation to really have this whole idea of a self-directed retirement plan like a 401k, where retirement is our responsibility. We weren't given any, basic financial education in school. I mean, I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook until I was almost finished with high school, and I basically taught myself how to do that. That wasn't taught in home economics class. So I'm curious to hear from you guys when it comes to, retirement planning. Is that something that you feel like is a total pipe dream? Do you feel like that's completely out of reach? No matter where you are on that continuum, one of the things that I and my wife and I have done is we've reached what's called financial independence, retire early. Now, that doesn't mean that we're completely retired or that I'm completely retired and that I don't have coaching and an online business. I was able to retire from full-time corporate America nightmare employment in 2019. And I've basically run my own business. I've done contract work, so I guess what are what you would call barista-fi. So we've gotten to a place where, we're not touching our nest egg. We're living off the income that we're producing through our labor. And that's, through various side hustles and contracts and things of that nature. So I'm curious, where are you guys in that scenario? Now, if you feel like you're behind, particularly if you feel like, hey, look, I've heard a lot about Bitcoin. I feel like I've missed the train. There's a lot of miseducation that has happened in the space, especially in terms of corporate media, legacy media. It's done a great job of really deflecting Bitcoin from the masses, which Bitcoin was actually meant for us. So if you're in that camp and you're like, I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to retire, I don't know what a roadmap would look like, I put together a free resource. It's my financial optimization system. I believe that, one of the main things that you have to do with your money is that you have to develop a system. Now, you can have goals and you can have those things they're not necessarily bad, but if you don't have a system where you can focus just on the inputs and you're just focused on the goal, most of the time you're not going to reach those goals. That's just It's scientific fact. So if you're interested in that, just leave OPTO in the comments and I'll send you a copy of that. And then we can keep the conversation going. So if you're Gen X, if you were born between 1965 and 1980, I would love to know, do you feel like Social Security is going to be there for you? Do you feel like you're going to be able to retire? Where are you along that continuum? What do you need the most help with? Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.